Good evening, sir.
Hey, Fessa.
How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going really well. I've had a wonderful morning, a great way to kind of start up and get moving. How's it's evening time for you. How's your evening? The rest of your day pretty good?
Beautiful day. We
Excellent.
after that last night's thunderstorm, the whole day we get lovely, lovely cool weather. The temperature went down like 15 degrees and clouds and rain, and it was just beautiful, lovely day.
Outstanding.
And when you,
Outstanding.
and when you're fasting,
Yeah.
cool days are very welcome.
Yes, and it was nice. Yesterday, we were about 15 degrees cooler. Yeah, we were about 15 degrees cooler all day yesterday.
Yeah.
So it was nice, and we had a nice breeze and stuff. Still a little bit too hot to sit out on the patio or the terrace. However, beautiful day all the way around. So excellent. That's really good that you guys had that storm. It's always for me, it's always welcome.
So before we jump into biases and prejudices, you were earlier telling me about ever since Ramadan started, you've been living on one meal a day.
Yes.
So tell me more about it, man. What's the experience? What's caused you to do that? What's the trigger? And what's the experience?
Well, the trigger really was nothing more than, I wanted to. I just figured Ramadan. For me, it's not a faith thing or a religious thing. However, so I just decided to take that. A lot of people I work with are fasting, and I just decided to kind of join. So I'm eating one meal a day. It is typically when the sun is still out, so it's around 6 to 7 p.m. in the evening, usually about 7:30. And so with that, I'm eating one meal a day, and I try to pack it full of. It's probably right at about 1,200 calories that I consume in a day, and I just try to pack it with the basics, which is really clean fuel, so clean carbs, and then fibers and fats. So protein, there's a lot of focus on protein. I don't particularly focus on that, except especially now when I'm not going to the gym and lifting heavy. So the experience I've had is I did it because I just wanted to do something to as a focus of discipline. I put myself. I practice deliberate discipline, so this was just an easy way for me to do it for this month, and I could just kind of not think about it. So I'm just feeling so much better. I feel lighter. I have less brain fog. I feel like I'm kind of resetting. So, I fast on a regular basis, at least once a month. I usually go 24 to 48 hours with nothing. And so this has just been a little bit better because I'm keeping my energy level up. Next week, I'll be allowed to go back to the gym. So I'll need to add a little bit more in there as well, to keep my body functioning.
As I was suggesting on our private chat, at some point, I'm going to convince you to do a complete eating from the sun's kitchen, and since you're already on the track, so might as well tweak your intake and do a complete demucusing of your system. But that's not for today. The reason I asked you about your experiences, because I have a habit of taking any conversation, sticking into the topic. So I know what you're doing is scientific and just as personal experience, but here's the thing: we have biases and prejudices against things we don't understand, things we have not seen in our environment and system, and as a result, a lot of people would say, "Fasting, oh my, how do you do that?"
Right.
It doesn't hurt to try it for a week and then see how we do that. So what Dennis is doing, yes, may be scientific, but also giving him a first-hand experience of what it is to do that in a system. Doing intermittent fasting is one thing. Going 48 hours without food is another thing. But actually doing it in the discipline of a daily ritual, sort of,
Right.
it puts you in somebody else's shoes and makes you realize that the way other people do things are not necessarily right or wrong. They're just different ways of doing it. And experiencing that firsthand changes a lot.
No, it really does. And I remember the first time I fasted. It's kind of when I adopted a vegan lifestyle. And I'm no longer. I have incorporated some animal products back into my diet, but that's really. I started before I started. I went 3 months on a vegan lifestyle, but before I started that, I did a 72-hour fast, water only. So all I did was drink water, and 72 hours, and then I started the vegan diet, and I never really went back to the diet that I had before, and the interesting thing was, is a lot of people they end up. diets and stuff, fasting is a lot about weight loss and that sort of thing. What I noticed is I just felt so good mentally. I had more energy. I actually slept better. My brain fog was kind of gone. I was able to like wake up and like face the day before like a cup of coffee and all of that. So I think it's mindfulness like we've talked about. It's a practice in discipline but the discipline part of it becomes easier because I feel so good. So, one of the things like I'm not a drinker per se. I would, have maybe one beer a night, like every 2 to 3 times a week. And like even, it just doesn't even make sense to keep that in my diet at all when I'm practicing everything else. So, I'm actually fitting back into clothes that had gotten a little tight since quarantine started. So, I just looked at it as an opportunity to kind of like prime myself for the world reopening. And, I personally believe that I will get COVID at some point, and I need to keep my body in a condition to be able to fight it effectively.
Interesting to say that. But again, before we digress, I think we should talk about that, being prepared for something that could happen. That's another topic altogether.
Absolutely.
But biases and prejudices are taken in the connotation of gender, race, social status. But the most fundamental form of a bias or prejudice is you see all these examples on the internet where half the words, or a lot of words have many alphabets missing, and yet you can read them because the mind is biased to read it in a certain way. You see the Germanic the Germanic characters, and the moment you read that, the first instinct is that you assume it is English. It could be Spanish, German, or anything else. But our brain is trained to immediately evaluate things based on our personal experiences, learning, and that is one of the most fundamental examples of a bias or prejudice. So the only reason I threw that in is just to emphasize on the point I've written on top. Everyone is biased. We are all guilty of assumption. We're all guilty of pigeonholing our experiences, people, things. And we try to make everything we experience fit into a certain pigeonhole, which is created by our own life experiences. And that is the awareness that I think that's the door, Dennis. I'll go to you to establish that awareness that we're all biased. Not necessarily are we victims of bias. In one way or the other, we are also biased.
Yes.
And that's the awareness we need before we can go any further.
Absolutely. And I completely agree. And to me, I think when we talk about the awareness, it's important to understand that our biases, in many cases, a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, I am not judgmental. I hate judgmental people. But yet we're all judgmental. And so to a certain degree, and that judgment is based on our biases. So no, the awareness part of just at least acknowledging the fact that, I do feel this way. I do view the world this way. A really good example that was given to me to kind of illustrate personal biases is when I was going through training, they said, okay, everybody close your eyes. So we all closed our eyes, and they said, okay, what does a terrorist look like? And man, that right? I mean, that automatically, and in my country, a terrorist is, a white guy with an AK-47 around their, chest or and blowing up schools. I mean, because we have tons of mass shootings here in the United States. So,
sure.
I mean, it's not always the person, in the Taliban or, any of these other groups. We all have an idea of what that is. So if you just simply say, what's a terrorist look like? We can all kind of draw a conclusion to that. But what's that based on? It's based on stereotypes. Yeah. If I were to say, what does a basketball player in the NBA look like? Right? We're all going to go, wow, it's probably a really tall, over 6 foot tall black guy, right? Mm-hmm. So we all have these biases, and they're not bad. I mean, I think it's important to point out that these biases, in many ways, they're to keep us safe. We're looking for commonality with people so that we can fit in and be accepted, because that makes us feel safe. So they're not a bad thing. It's just simply that we must acknowledge it, because biases lead to judgmentalness. And it's also important to point out that being aware of it says, wow, man, I do view the world this way. Is that how I want to view the world?
Okay, I found a new way of doing this. Whatever I'm thinking, I'm going to actually throw this in the comments.
Perfect,
So
okay.
A, it doesn't get lost. B, it becomes, for future, it becomes, posterity. It's fantastic. So you said, people who say that they hate judgmental people.
Yeah.
That line itself is a bias or prejudice or a judgment.
It's a judgmental statement. Absolutely. No, completely.
Right?
And that's no, totally, 100%.
Okay, so one needs to understand that, even if you're judging against a judgmental person, that is judging. And even
Yeah.
if you assume that a judgmental person is all bad, even that is a bias or a prejudice. So, we have to be more analytical about that, but we'll come to that in a second. Dennis, you mentioned stereotypes. I'm going to slightly deflect. Before opening the second door, I want to understand, where do these stereotypes come from? Who creates these stereotypes?
Well, I think a lot of that depends on our programming and upbringing. So when I mean programming, it's the stuff that we're taught. I mean, they're not necessarily, we take them as facts. However, as we get older, we also kind of, or we experience challenges based on these values that were given to us. So I'm just going to say, kind of a low-hanging fruit example is, living here in the U.S., Faisal, you lived here for a while. We're given a very specific image. We're given a very specific image of what a terrorist looked like. And let's just be honest. Living in the United States, I've been told what, and it's not Muslim countries, it's Arabic countries, as if all Muslims are Arabic, right? So
Right.
that's what we're doing is we're really just, it's easy. The reason biases occur, they get programmed into us, and the reason we hang on to them is because that's what makes sense of the world to us. So once we start questioning those, like, well, wait a minute. So, when I was in the Middle East last year, it was like, wait a minute, Muslims don't hate me. Like, that's what I was taught. But what I found is Muslims didn't give a rat's ass about me any more than Christian gives a rat's ass about me. So it really comes down to my bias of thinking I'm more important than I actually am. So, and that people really care. So again, it comes down to what we've been programmed to think. And we're constantly being bombarded with this. As soon as you open your social feed, you turn on the television, which I do very rarely now, because I'm tired of being told what to think and how to believe.
But who is the biggest institution or group or organization or system which tells you what to think? I'm trying to go somewhere.
Yeah, it's religion.
No, it's media. Even media. Without media, there'd be no, religion would be such a simple thing if there wasn't any media.
True. Yeah, that's
right.
a good point. No, the media does take and they take and propagate these stereotypes. It just is. I can tell you here in the United States, I don't often hear about we're led to believe that our police officers only kill black people. That's not true. When you look at the statistics, but let's be honest, FQ, you're in the media for a long time. Statistics aren't really that sexy. So what's sexy is showing the protesters, right? That's salacious. That's what we want to see. So it's kind of like, there's a big part of people saying, oh, President Trump's a white supremacist. I don't know whether he is or not, but you can't, when you take and you show 100 people at a rally and you're making it out like that's the entire country, that's where some of these biases come in. And when we just wholeheartedly believe what the media is telling us.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of critical thinking that's not involved there.
Thank you. Critical thinking. I'm going to put that because I want to start with that, my next point. But before I do, I'm going to throw in a story. Critical thinking, right? I'm going to make a note here. I'm going to throw in an interesting story. This is just after 9/11, about a year after 9/11, and I was working. I was associated with a company, San Francisco based, with a lot of people in there. But interestingly, I was the oldest person in that company, and our CFO was British. His wife was Scottish, well, British Scottish, you know what I mean. So once we went to San Francisco, and this couple was going to take me out for dinner, and his wife had only heard about me from them, Pakistani, Muslim, and the oldest man in the company. which I was like 40 some back then. So they were on the road outside my hotel. They call, I come down, and she doesn't know what I look like. She's never met me. And I try to open the back door, and she suddenly locked the car and started pulling the door in. And I'm like, what happened? It's a slight embarrassing moment. But anyways, the gentleman opened the door, we go for dinner. And mid-dinner, I said, hey, what happened? She goes, well, they had said you're the oldest man, you're from Pakistan, you're Muslim, and I was expecting somebody with a long beard and a turban.
Right.
And here comes this man trying to open the door. And so the thing is, just after 9/11, a massive media movement was created to establish a certain, not the look of the terrorist, but the look of a whole part of the world.
Absolutely.
And those prejudices and those biases and those stereotypes were ingrained into people's minds. And only by interaction, what I'm trying to build here is only by interaction. Dennis is the way he is because he travels. He's been to the Middle East. He interacts with Arabs, and that is the reason his view of the world is completely different. And that is where we need to come, and that's where I want to throw in critical thinking.
Yeah.
We evaluate situations, things, and people based on instinct. Instinct is built on stereotypes and prejudice. We need to start, as you said, Dennis, critical thinking or analytical thinking. We need to learn to analyze people, analyze everything critically and objectively, and not based on our previous instinct. Yeah?
Right. No, I completely agree. And an example, I mean, this has always been something that's been a little confusing for me. My father was military, and so I was around military bases. And, the interesting thing is, most of my friends, their parents, I mean, they were of different nationalities. I mean, a lot of guys in the American military bring women home over to the U.S. And so that was kind of my experience, and yet at the same time, like that was my experience of more of inclusivity, diversity, not being a big deal. But at the same time, and I don't know how much many people know about this in your part of the world, we have an extremist organization over here that my mother's family was a part of, and so I was seeing diverse cultures.
You mean the south of the country?
Yeah, so I ended up attending 2 rallies for the Ku Klux Klan.
The hoods and all, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was there, cross burning, the whole thing, and so it was just all very, very confusing to me. But then I was a kid, so I went on about, became an adult and everything. I saw my own, I had my own experiences, but I never really put too much into it until I really started interacting with people from other parts of the world. And my job that I had for a while kept me kind of tied to where I was. However, I live in an area with a very large Indian community. In fact, less than 5 kilometers from me is a Sikh temple. So
Right.
and I have visited that. So that I would say, that we've talked about the negatives of education and whether education was failing us. I'm very appreciative for those parts of my education because it forced me to go. I had to do cultural experiences, so it forced me to interact with people that I probably normally wouldn't have. And the really interesting thing was from that, I actually ended up getting clients from the Sikh community. So now they're my clients. And it's just like, wait a minute, we're really more the same than the differences that we like to take and focus on. Because truthfully, Faisal, I don't know any Christian that has killed anybody in a mass shooting. I don't know any Muslim that has gotten on a plane and hijacked it. So those are criminals. And I think that we just need that critical thinking part is, wait a minute, that's criminal behavior that has nothing to do with the real religion. That's just crazy ideologies.
Beautifully. It's a criminal who prays in a certain way or has certain beliefs. It's not somebody who prays in a certain way or has certain beliefs who did this. It's a criminal who also has those beliefs. So just like a rapist has no religion, just like a thief has no religion, Just like a bank fraud person doesn't have a religion, likewise, a murderer or a mass murderer does not have a religion. So anyways,
Right.
we are slightly digressing. Back, once you are aware, let's open the second door, you have to accept
Yep.
and own. Acceptance, ownership is really in the same area, but you have to accept that not only are we all victims of bias, but we are also perpetrators of bias and each and every one in one way or the other. You may think brown people, and I may think white people dirty or whatever. Like it's happening. It's happening in Thailand, and a lot of guailos. Guailo is the white ghost. That's
Okay.
you didn't know that? Okay.
I did
In
not.
Hong Kong-
I live near Mexico, so I just know I'm a gringo.
No, in Hong Kong and a lot of Chinese speaking, you call guailos the white
Okay.
ghost. So, because I spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, anyway. So the guailo, they're actually saying, "You guys are filthy. Go back home." People who've got businesses in Thailand, and because of COVID-19, they're facing bias and prejudice and hatred, just like the Chinese were facing it in the U.S.
Yep.
So here's the thing: you have to accept that not only are we victims of prejudice, but we're also perpetrators of prejudice in one way or the other.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I've been guilty of this myself. And I think it's easy to look at the biases from these extreme views, terrorism and that sort of thing. But I like an easy bias that impacts me. So just for full disclosure, I mean, when you first suggested for me to do start my broadcast and use your channel as well, they're automatically were ringing. My biases were ringing. Like, what? Well, wait a minute. These people tune in to follow him. They're tuning in to follow FQ. They're not tuning into me. This is going to be weird. Are all these people from Pakistan really going to accept me? I mean, here's this white guy, So, I mean, these are the things that went through my head. And what I have found is it's just all bullshit. And I've had very good experiences with interacting with members of the, international community. And so, these are how I from a back to basics approach, like, our biases get in our way, even when they are low level. I'm really not. I don't walk around being afraid of a terrorist. I just don't. I don't live in that kind of an area. Random violence that happens everywhere. So, for me, the biases really come in. To me, the acceptance part of it is to go, wait a minute. I'm accepting that I'm feeling this way, and I'm going to acknowledge. That's the ownership part. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm feeling this way, and I'm going to own it. So that it's okay to feel that way. What do I want to do with it, though? Do I want to just ruminate on, these feelings, or what do I want to do with that acknowledgement?
Very good point. Because see, bias and prejudice is so deeply ingrained that I'm going to be honest, 99% of the time, we don't see it as bias. We see it as something completely natural. I mean, I'm going to be. Let's get dangerous here. Let's start talking about personal shit, which is not good. I mean, okay, anywhere in the world, you will come across little China, little India. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., you'll come across little Italy as well.
Yeah.
Now you tell me to go to little China or Chinatown, not little China, Chinatown,
Uh-huh.
and I will go. And I will go for the food, and I will go to hang out. And you tell me to go to little India, and I'm like, ugh, that's dirty and that's gross, and I don't want to go there, man. You tell me to go to little Italy, I'm going to go, crime, fraud. It's all assumption, and the fact of the matter is, it is not like that. So the prejudices are, and I'm going to get really risky here. I've spent time in the South, in Louisiana, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Bloody in the bayou. And I'm sorry, but you know what? Whenever I've gone, I haven't been there back then about 15, 20 years, but go to New Orleans, you go to Baton Rouge, you're in Lafayette, and you see people of a certain ethnic background, and you start walking on the other side of the road.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, we do it. I do it. I still do it because your protective mechanism, another word for it is your acceptance mechanism,
Right.
assumes that this person poses a threat. because popular media, television, film has associated a certain way of talking to a certain kind of risk. And I'm not just talking about yo, I'm also talking about hey Vern.
Absolutely.
So even hey Vern is scary
Yeah.
for
No,
somebody for a brown person in the bayou. Hey Vern is very scary.
You know what? And the funny thing is I don't know if you're watching my face or not. I was watching my face on the camera, trying to like look at my own expressions because I don't do that often enough. But you mentioned that part of the country.
Yeah.
Fessel, there's a reason I don't go to that part of the country. I mean, it strikes. I mean, it strikes me at my very base brain of like, ugh. You know,
Bias alert! Bias
total,
alert!
100%. And that's in my own country. It's really interesting, you know, because I recently had a conversation with a couple colleagues and friends of mine, you know, until I met you. Until I met you, you know, I truly just didn't, because I've had friends from India, and now I've had friends in
Right.
Pakistan, and so I truly did not know the disagreements. I'm just going to use that word. The disagreements that occur between the two countries and cultures. And from my perspective, it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. However, but when you talk about a certain region of my country, ugh, it's the same thing. So whether or not like it's warring or fighting, we still have these thoughts. And my, I know exactly what you're talking about, Fessel. I've lived in that part of the country, and you know, there's just it is not aligned with who I am as a person, and there's just certain times when I hear people from certain parts of the country, the South and the Cajun area, that I just don't think that they necessarily communicate with a degree of intelligence that I like to view the world from. So again, there's intelligent people there. I know that. These are my biases. So I think the biases are okay. It's just when they lead us to do bad things. Thoughts?
Okay. Question.
Yeah.
When I first entered the classroom, because you were my NLP teacher trainer, I'm going to plug this in. Dennis is an NLP master coach, executive coach. He can fix your businesses, your matters. Go to his website. I'm an NLP practitioner myself, trained by none other than Dennis. So what happened when I first walked in or entered or digitally joined your classroom and I introduced myself? What went on? I'm friends now, it's all right.
Yeah, say that again. We broke up.
I said when I first walked into your classroom digitally, introduced myself, went through your head?
Actually, nothing. Nothing went through my head. Nothing went through my head. Right. What was told? What happened though, is there were some other people in the class that they have immigrated to the United States. This is where they live, but they're from different parts in India. So I didn't think anything of you, but I was told what to think of you. So
is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah, and actually, you know, it's really interesting because you know, I have had a couple of people. I literally have, since we've started doing this broadcast about a month ago. I've had a couple of people that I know from, again, different parts of India, and they're like, "Hey, if you're gonna talk to that Pakistani, then I don't want anything to do with you." I'm like, "Okay,
You're serious?
Peace." I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And really quickly, I just want to address Mr. Munir's comment. Yes, you're totally correct. I did. I reinforced the bias and the prejudice. You're absolutely correct. And I think, but that's just simply to illustrate the point. I don't dislike them. It's what automatically comes into my mind. It's the same as when you know, I spent a lot of time in that area. It really didn't change my opinion. It probably reinforced my biases, truthfully. So it's simply just that we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it so that we can accept it and understand that, wow, what is this meaning? So what do I want from it? I need to own that I feel this way. So what is it that I want to do with that? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. It's just the funny stereotypes that automatically pop into my head. I mean, I think it's just being transparent and, authentic. So I appreciate the comment. You're absolutely right. I did do it. And it's really to kind of illustrate the point. We all we all do this to some degree. And what the stuff I had said had nothing to do with terrorism or color of skin or, closing borders, any of that kind of stuff. Fessel?
Okay, the reason I went into this discussion about personal biases and
Yeah.
really exposing ourselves here and trying to be careful not to get into trouble is what we're trying to establish for our viewers is you all have these biases.
Mm-hmm.
So just like the Indians were telling you against me,
Mm-hmm.
we are both indirectly telling people around the south of the US.
Yes.
We're doing exactly the same thing. And everyone is constant. Whether it's good or bad is a completely secondary discussion. We're in the awareness, acceptance, ownership zone. It is
Yes.
completely irrelevant whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. But we do it.
We do
We
it.
need to accept the fact and own the fact that we do it. Now, why would these Indians have anything against me? Now, there are two reasons. One, of course, India, Pakistan. But of course, Indians personally have a serious problem with me because I have personally taken on a lot of. I've done a lot of videos which Indians don't like.
Yeah.
Major. I'll send you some links. Majorly, very, very popular, like 18 million view type videos to which Indian intelligence agencies had to make videos against me to counter that shit. So that
Okay.
level of hatred exists between me
Yeah.
and them. But I don't think these people had that reason. They probably just had an India-Pakistan bias, which is kind of stupid. Just like Dennis and I having a bias against people in the south of the country, because there's some beautiful people. I've spent a lot of time there. Some of my best friends are from that area, because that's where I made friends.
Sure.
Means there's no good or bad about people. What we're trying to establish
Right.
here is there's good and bad about our opinion. Unless you really get to know somebody and find out they're really assholes, then they're assholes.
Yes.
But without actually knowing somebody, you assume they're bad or good and you pigeonhole them. Now, here's what I want to open up. You're not just hurting them, you're hurting your own bloody opportunities. Like
Yeah.
Dennis just mentioned, he went to Sikh temple, spent some time there, and guess what? He gets business from that.
Yeah.
So you are screwing up your own opportunity. Imagine if I'm a Caucasian, white, 6 foot tall, whoever, and I pigeonhole and remove from my life colored people, brown people, southern people, and the Asians and the Vietnamese, and who the F am I left with to work? I'm basically screwing up my own market. So you
Yeah.
gotta say, I don't want to work with bad people, but I will take good people, regardless of how they pray, who they pray to, what color of their skin, or if they eat noodles or spaghetti.
Right. No, I completely agree, and I just want to make the distinction that I do believe that there is a difference when there is a bias, that is not based in any type of evidence. So I lived in the South. I mean, I lived in the South. That was part of where I lived. So really, I think my biases were developed. I wanted to live in the South. So make no mistake, I wanted to live there, but my biases were developed by living there. So I think that's very different than me automatically like hating the Muslim community or thinking a certain way when I don't even like really interact with it. I mean, truthfully, the most interaction I get with people of the Muslim community are online or when I travel. It's not right here in my home state. So it's really kind of interesting, and I do want to just say that the Sikh temple experience was it was beautiful. I actually took my sons there with me on a couple of occasions, and they just thought it was super cool that they got to wear bandanas on their head in church. So that was kind of a funny thing. And even though we didn't necessarily understand, so again, let's talk about the Sikh temple. When I went in there, very first thing I noticed, female sat on one side, male sat on the other.
Yeah.
So now that's already reinforcing a bias I had been taught. Sitting through the service, and I have no idea what was said. None. Couldn't understand. I don't understand the language at all. Had no idea. What I can tell you though, yeah, the ladies were sitting over here. The men were sitting over here. I felt more welcome. I felt more accepted, and I left with a full belly than I ever had a Christian church that I had attended. So it until we expose ourselves, we will not be able to shatter some of these stereotypes or biases that we have in our own life. So it's not that biases are bad, it's that we have them. And in order to really be successful, we have to take and acknowledge that they exist. And then we have to, we're not there yet, but own it. Just own it that it is okay. I don't use them to hate because I'm not a hateful person.
Beautiful point you just made, Dennis. I want to talk about that. Biases are not all bad. So yeah, when we say we go to a certain part of the world, we see certain kind of people, we become protective. It's not completely wrong, because you don't want to assume that because you're biased, they are all, no, they are bad people who may dress or look or behave like that. So, well, Brooklyn or Bronx is not a good example anymore because this is premium property. But in back 20, 30 years ago, if you went to Queens, and if you came across, you went to a place of entertainment in Queens, you better be scared, because you know what? Those people could cause you serious harm.
Yes.
So biases are not all wrong. You see somebody with tattoos of dragons on their back, unlike Dennis, and they're also carrying a knife. Be careful. If you're in Hong Kong and you go to a gym, a friend of mine has had that experience, where he was on the wrong side of the towel in the locker room of somebody who was with the Chinese mafia in Hong Kong, and he had the particular gang tattoos. Mm-hmm. So don't assume that all tattooed people are sweet and cuddly like Dennis. They could also be from a gang or from a mafia.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to have the biases, but if the biases are preemptively making you hate people, that's a problem. If you're biased or prejudiced or analytical mind based on what you've learned and understood is making you protect yourself against certain situations, that is perfectly all right. If I see somebody wielding a gun, I'm going to keep an eye on him that he doesn't point at me. But doesn't mean he's out to kill me, but still you have to be protective. Don't hate him, try to understand more what's going on. Don't just assume that all biases are bad, Dennis.
Yeah, and I'm going to say what really struck me, and I don't feel like I'm not. I understand I have biases. I don't think I'm a bigot or. Absolutely not one of the worst bikes on the road. So no. I don't need another vehicle that just leaks oil everywhere. So
a BMW maybe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I truly fully understood this concept, Faisal, of how biases really work was when I was in the Middle East, and because now I'm in the minority. So when we're in the majority, it's easy to these other people are like this. But when you become in the minority, now you're on the receiving end of biases. So, with that being said, I just want to say the thing with it is a lot of times the unhealthy bias is when it leads to hate and not liking somebody or another group or something like that. That is so incredibly stressful. It's incredibly stressful. It's very emotionally heavy to carry around. And I'm just going to come out and say it. Carrying that around, it destroys our psyche. It just destroys our psyche, and it has the possibility to turn us into terrible human beings.
Yeah.
So I don't like to feel stressed out. Hating you, it just takes way too much effort. It really just takes too much effort. It's so much easier just to accept each other and take those. It's easier to actually destroy our biases than to hold on to them. Holding on to them takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. So we have now clearly identified the two kind of biases. One is bias where you're just hateful towards somebody, or not letting it into your in group. That is a problem. But the other kind of bias where if you're going to eat street food in Sudan, it's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. It's not a good idea to eat street food in Thailand. Maybe I'm sorry. Westerners rave all about the street food in Asia. I've seen the street food in Asia. You do not want to touch it with a 100-foot pole. It's like, oh my
Sure.
God. Oh my God. So that's a bias. In the process, you may miss out on some fantastic food, but do you want to really take the risk? Likewise, going to certain neighborhoods, as it was called the hood. If it's a risky area, do you really want to go there? No.
Right.
So if you have a bias against, for example, if you have a bias against, give me an example, man, Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's okay to hold that bias and not go there for your vacation. That's perfectly,
Sure.
that's all right. That's
Absolutely.
a choice.
Yep.
But if you say, if I introduce myself, hey, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, or you, oh, now that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because you have no
Yeah.
idea what I'm like or who I am. You have to get to know me.
There it is.
So we have clearly established the two kind of biases and prejudices. One which is constructive, the other is destructive.
Absolutely.
And the destructive biases, Dennis, need to be the final door challenged.
No, absolutely. And, that's one of the, it's one of the most challenging our biases is actually pretty simple, but doing simple things is proving to be very difficult in a lot of cases. I just think a lot of times we don't think that the simple stuff will really work. And again, I've said this before on this broadcast in the show is, what evidence do I have to support this? That Muslims are bad, and low-hanging fruit. So why do I think that? Well, why are they bad? Well, because Fox and Friends told me so. All my friends on Fox told me so. So, and it's just like, wait a minute, like, I'm smarter than that. I know how to critically think, and so it really just comes down to going, wait a minute, like, I understand that we're constantly being influenced. And if you don't think you're being influenced, you're absolutely fooling yourself. Here in the United States, marketing for supermarkets, advertising and marketing, they set supermarkets up in a way that each person, you might go in there for one or two things, but you will come out with 7 more. 7. Not 6, not 20, 7 more products than what you went in there for. So we're all being influenced. And whether or not, we talked about minimalism. People are influenced. Oh, man, it's going to be a great thing because it's on sale. I must buy 2. Instead of, looking at it from a perspective of, wait a minute, do I need this? How is this going to add value to my life? Is this belief system even serving me? Because if I had kept a hold of my belief system, and so religion had a big impact on me where belief systems were concerned. So when I actually walked into the Sikh temple, I'm not joking. I truly believed I was sinning. Like, I did not think God would be pleased with that. And then I started really understanding these are people. We're all trying to get to the same place. We're just going about it a little bit differently. And again, what really impacted me, they didn't treat me with bias. That's how I was really able to see it, was I was expecting a certain thing, and it was just one of the most wonderful experiences of my existence. They were beautiful, beautiful people and very welcoming. So the challenging part, we have to put ourselves in situations to get new experiences. And unless we do that, all we do is we hang out with people. I mean, you think about it, there's absolutely nothing to be learned by communicating only with those that agree with you. So find somebody that challenges your belief system and challenge your own thoughts. Like, why do I feel this way? Well, because Fox and Friends told me. Really? Like, what? That's weird.
So Dennis, you just said that, we are being constantly bombarded with biases and prejudices, and we are being brainwashed constantly. I mean, I have failed to understand why pink is girl and blue is boy. Why girls grow up liking pink, and why? Because a bloody bias we create even before the child is born. Sure. And that's how deeply ingrained our biases and prejudices are. And when Dennis talked about challenging and questioning your own biases, I think we should also challenge other people's biases, not with aggression, but in my opinion, in 2 ways. One, when you see somebody biased or prejudiced against someone unnecessarily, I'm going to multiple highlight it, unnecessarily. If there's necessary bias, I'm okay with that. If it's unnecessary, Interesting. What's necessary bias? If I am biased about the same thing, that becomes necessary bias.
Sure it does. Sure it does.
But if it's unnecessary bias, at least stand with the victim. At least give victim the hope and courage that, you know what, it's not all bad. There are people for you. So, you know, you make them feel comfortable, one. Secondly, the person who is the perpetrator, the one with the bias or prejudice, who is being negative and destructive or hateful, you have to also subtly, without getting your ass kicked, also identify to them that, you know what, hey, maybe you're on the wrong track, man. It's not a good idea.
I completely agree. And for me, one of the biases that I really had to, I really struggled with it for a little bit, you know, and it happened really quick, that my mindset on this changed. I truly believed. So I've been told my whole life, everybody wants to come to America. Everybody wants to come to America. Well, when I first started traveling internationally, I met up with a group in Calgary, Canada, and you know, I asked them. Everybody there was from someplace they were not Canadian. So I asked them, like, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you come to the United States? Like, we're the best. They're like, F you guys. You're dirty. You're arrogant. You're money hungry. You don't take care of people, and your streets are filthy. So, and I'm like, screw you, dude. You don't even know what you're talking about. And then what happened is I go to you know, a real big international trip last year. And again, everybody loves Americans, right? I mean, we're the heroes. We solve the world's problems. And so until I found myself with a gun in my face and I'm face down being detained in Cairo, Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you told me. That's sucky, man.
It was an interesting experience. At never time did I think I was like going to get killed or anything like that. But I was like, what the F is going on? I just was like bewildered. And all that had happened was my escort at that time, he said, it was Friday. He says, hey, I'm going to dunk into I'm going to head into the mosque for Friday prayers. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I'm just going to hang out here. Well, next thing I know, people are yelling at me. People are yelling in a language I don't understand, and I'm just checking out my phone, and I'm like, they're like, ah! And I'm like, whoa, wait, what's with the gun, dude? And they're putting me down on the ground, and I'm laying out on the ground like this. Well, when my escort came out, my chaperone Hashem, he came out, and he's like, what is going on? And so afterwards, he started laughing with the police officers, and I'm like, dude, what was going on? He goes, oh, they were just effing with you. He goes, you're an American, and he goes, they were just screwing with you. I'm like, really? I said, why would they do that? He goes, you screw with us when we come to your country. I'm like, yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, you know, it was
that's
like,
so funny.
I needed that. Like, for me, like, it was like, man, I got to change. I've got to change some of my biases. I have to change my mindset and my perspective. You know, and truthfully, I needed to change my perspective because I was making myself vulnerable. I don't want to say arrogant. I was putting myself in a vulnerable position by believing everybody loves Americans. That's just not true.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that concludes what you were saying. And there are some comments. The conversation has taken a nice turn. I think I want to go there, and I want to start at the bottom, not at the top. So, you know, Rafi said something really interesting. She said, I will wear black nail varnish as opposed to pink or red. I think black nail color is really sexy, by the way, all right? But, you know, here comes Hamad with black nail varnishes for satanists. And you have a bias. And exactly, I'm biased against satanists. Okay, now here's the thing. Why are you biased against them, man? What have they done to you? I want to hear this. Okay, Dennis, if you're up to it, I'm going to put the join link for a few minutes. If somebody wants to quit. We have a few minutes. We have 10 minutes. If somebody wants to join in with the video, I've posted the link. So come on in.
That's hysterical to me.
Exactly. So I want to start that way.
It's so
Go on.
funny to me. Like when I hear people say that they're Satanists or they're atheists, it's just like, man, it's just so much more challenging to believe in that stuff than a regular religion or, God or Allah or Jesus or even just, the Jewish faith. So it just takes so much more effort to be a Satanist or an atheist than I'm willing to devote to it. So
Here's my question. Even if you're Satanist, how does it affect me? Unless if you're doing your Satanism on me,
yeah, but what
then
are
we
they
have a
doing?
problem.
What are they doing? Casting a spell?
Well,
Please
if you're
cast
hexing me, fine. No, dude, if you're gonna hex me, I'm gonna screw with you. Don't hex me, all right?
Well, I guess you have to believe
Do not
in the hex.
hex me. No, man, don't even
can't-
try hexing me, all right?
You can't hurt me with things I don't believe in. So
Okay, this is getting interesting. I don't like suited guys too far from me. There you go. Hey, come on, guys. Both of you get on video. We want to hear this argument.
this is great. Yeah, for sure. And I like the comment about the Harley and the tattoos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, this totally illustrates the point. And so, like, part of the reason I've said this before, I got the tattoos is because I wanted to project that kind of image. I didn't want people to mess with me. I wanted people to think I was a badass. But the reality is, like, when I did that, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why did people treat me like I'm a badass? I'm a nice guy. So we sometimes create biases for other people by our behaviors and our actions and our words. So I think it's just, if we want people to think of us in a certain way and we want to challenge those biases, then we have to present ourselves in a certain way. I don't like wearing a suit. I really don't like wearing a tie because when I do, it takes my beard and it pushes it all crazy. And, so I don't like that. However, if I'm going into a corporation, I put on a tie and I put on a jacket. Why? Because it makes them feel more comfortable. It has nothing to do with me at that point. What I'm trying to do is decrease the biases. And that's why one of the reasons I've not really tattooed my hands, because people automatically have a thought, regardless of my intention or not. So I appreciate, we all have this and it's not all negative. And I think what's really a good way to challenge a bias is to talk about the ridiculousness of it. Really, like, we are all just ridiculous creatures.
Okay, it's not just biases. You dress a certain way because you're supposed to dress a certain way. You dress a certain way because you're supposed to dress a certain way. It's not bias or anything. I mean, if you come to my a wedding in my family wearing shorts and sneakers, I'm not going to like it. You're basically disrespecting me. It's not a bias. You're disrespecting me. So you have to understand the norms and the cultures and the defaults of a certain thing. I mean, you fine if you are Led Zeppelin, you can go to a christening to church wearing a suit and shorts. Fine, you can be a Led Zeppelin. You can do it.
Right.
If you're Frank Zappa, you can do whatever hell you want.
Yes.
But if you're normal people, you will have to conform to the way certain things work.
Absolutely.
And I think I said this a long time ago on one of our shows as well. My experience with Singapore started about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Before that, we focused in Hong Kong and all these places. Hong Kong is always black. Everybody wears a bloody black suit. I have no fucking idea why. It's just so hot there, but everyone wears a black suit. And from Hong Kong, we went to Singapore for a meeting, black suits, me and this Gualo friend of mine. And we go in, we're waiting in the boardroom, people come in, the first thing they say is, Hong Kong. And we look around everywhere. In Singapore, nobody wears a jacket because it's so fucking hot.
Oh, okay.
And we look like idiots. And we
Yeah.
had ties. So first thing we did was took our jackets off and slowly took our ties off just so people would become comfortable because nobody wears a bloody tie there even.
Sure.
So you have to understand what's going on where. So that is not necessarily challenging or being biased. It's just, you have to understand how certain things are done in certain places. You can't go to a wedding looking like like a hobo. You don't do that. It's
Right.
disrespectful to where you're going.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that's, if we're not aware of these biases, I went and I did a speaking thing last year and it was, again, everybody loves Americans, right? Until I cross some cultural boundaries. And listen, it wasn't intentional at all. It was not intentional at all. But over here where I'm at and where I typically do my speaking, afterwards, like there's usually, because I talk about emotional constructs and concepts, there's usually a line of females. in the United States, most of my clients are female. And but when I went to the Middle East and traveled, I mean, it was my first stop, and I'm like, I literally did. I put my arm around somebody over here. That is like a sign of affection. Over there, like, I made somebody so uncomfortable and I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So for me, like, and I even say this right now, listen, as far as the science behind wearing a mask, I don't know. I truly don't. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a, infectious control person, anything like that. What I know is that, like, it makes people feel more comfortable. When people feel more comfortable, biases drop, and they're more willing to engage and get to know me. So if I want people to get to know me and to drop their biases about me, then I have to make it comfortable for them to do so.
Would you like to mention what happened to you with your hair yesterday?
Oh,
while talking about the mask?
A few days ago. And I got told.
The reason I'm plugging that in is it's not a bias. It is a requirement right now for people. You said, I don't know if a mask works, but it gives you a level of comfort. And if somebody is not following that SOP, then he's just being a jerk.
And that's why I went to get a haircut, and I was told, I said, dude, are you going to wear a mask? They're like, no, I don't let customers or fear run my business. I'm like, and I did. I'm like, dude, right on. Take a stand. Like, I respect the crap out of somebody that'll take a stand like that. And I told him, like, hey, dude, totally respect your position. Oh, you going to sit down? No. I respect myself more. I'm not comfortable with it, so peace. I'm leaving. But stick to your guns, man. Do you? And I'm okay with that. So now one of the what do I learn from that? Now I learned a bias. So these people aren't going to take and wear masks. So what do? I'm talking to another stylist right now. I said, first question, do you have availability and do you wear a mask?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and yes. Perfect. Then I guess we can do that. Mr. Azam, thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. I really appreciate that. And again, these are by saying that you're helping me to, like, reduce my biases. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that and challenging my thinking. I truly value that. Snackv, thank you. That's
this is my own comment.
Fine.
My own comment. I'm plugging in here.
You just wanted to see your face up there again.
Yeah, love it. I'm on the screen 2 times. I'm double on the screen, man. Have experience in a searching from a set of, yeah.
I completely agree. Completely agree, Bushra. Yes, it has to do with what we do with it, and anytime. Again, I think when we think about biases and we automatically go to extremism, and extremism is, I'm just going to say, I think that is such a low percentage. I look at the world like this. I look at, like, we have 80% of the people that are just normal people. They get up and go to work every day, try to do their thing, live their best life. You got 10% on the right and you got 10% on the left that stir shit for everybody in between. That's my bias.
There's one for you, man.
So I have been taught bias. Thank you. Yeah, you know what? And that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I appreciate you saying that. And that's very, very true. That's what we do is our biases lead us to make snap opinions and judgments. And if we really want to take and, like, elevate our lives, if we want to take and succeed, we have to take and go, whoa, why am I thinking this? And is that even true? And thank you. That's always been, it's been something I've been a little self-conscious about. So all of these experiences lessen my biases, even about myself. Because I think we didn't really get into that, but we do have biases about ourselves as well. And it just depends on what we do with it. And if it can be healthy, it can be healthy and lead to success, but it can also be very, very, low level, like, self-sabotage that's hard to overcome. So I thank you for saying that.
Except in our case, mate, I mean, both of us, I mean, we've known each other a while, but only recently we've started interacting on a daily basis, and we realize we're both very much alike, and rightly so. We both think we're beautiful, and we both think really hot and sexy and geniuses. And that's a perfectly good bias.
Absolutely.
And I endorse yours, and I hope you endorse mine, man. We endorse each other's bias on this one.
Bushra, thank you so much. Appreciate that. I love hearing that. Thank you. You've stroked my ego for today, so I really appreciate it.
And there's Rafia. Thank you, Rafia. I'm not aggressive at all, but you cross me the wrong way, I can be an asshole. Absolute. I am really cold-hearted and I can be brutal. Just don't ever challenge my independence. But hey, thank you very much. Okay, here's a good one.
Yes, I agree with that to a point, Mr. Munir. I mean, that's why we say, oh, I don't want to see this ad, or yes, I like this ad, or we click a like, and then it kind of tracks that. So I agree. I think that it does reinforce that. I think again, we just have to understand that we are all being manipulated to a certain degree, and so as long as we can accept that and acknowledge it, now that gives us actually power to have more choice in the way that we react to that information. So I'm going to say it again. If I try not to like a lot of things, and the reason is because I don't want all of that stuff to come in. I don't want to continue to reinforce biases that I have. So that's a challenge that we can all do for ourselves. Is because when all we do is hear and see opinions, and people agree with us, then it's like what I tell people. They're like, well, what's the difference? So as a coach, you're just like a really good friend. I'm like, no. The big difference is your friends agree with you. My job isn't to be your friend. My job is to challenge the way that you think. And if I'm your friend, I will say things to you that will ruin our friendship. So it's a very different relationship. So absolutely, if you want to learn, get outside of your circle and talk to people that know things that are different than you or that believe different than you.
Also, what Hamad is saying, social media is engineered. Let's not forget Cambridge Analytica and the massive damage it's done to two countries, Brexit and Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Two disasters created by Cambridge Analytica and the personalized engineering through social media.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I think Cambridge Analytica just became the fall guys. No one went to jail. I think that was the deal because, the genie was out of the bag.
Yeah.
It'll happen again and again and again. That shit is not going anywhere.
Well,
we
look
will
at
be
what
engineered. It's all right.
one of the biggest commodities right now. It's not even oil; it's data. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, human minds are cognitively prone to social categorization. It is a natural phenomenon. However, it's how you condition and implement that bias. Within a few seconds of meeting someone, our minds do an automatic scan. Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that is perfectly natural. That is our animal instinct to find people like ourselves and to stay away from anything which is not like us. But yes, we are no longer animals. This is 2020, and we need to, I'll conclude with this. We need to be aware. We need to accept. We need to take ownership. We need to challenge, and hopefully we can do a much better job. Thank you very much, Dennis. Quickly, tell me, how's Back to Basics?
Back to the Basics is going very well. Last night, we did talk about vulnerability. So, Rafia, thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad that was valuable to you. Tonight, what we're actually going to be discussing is people pleasing. So, basically, if you're trying to please everybody, really, you're making everybody miserable. So, we're going to be talking about that, the two sides of people pleasing and the signs of people pleasing and how to take and kind of, adopt some new lifestyle choices into our daily life. So it's going very well. And I'm just going to say, I've probably got about, maybe another week on FQ's channel. So please, if you haven't done it yet, I'm trying to get better about this. I'm kind of new. But if you haven't done it yet, please go to my Facebook page, Tyrell Coaching, and subscribe to it, follow me, and then you'll know when my lives are. The only other thing I would say is if anybody, I really like working with the international audience. So if there is a time slot, I know 6 a.m. is a little early. I'm happy to do another one. Just let me know in the comments at some point what is a good time. So subscribe to my page, and then also let me know what is a good time where, works better for people.
You mentioned people pleasing. How
Yeah.
about we take this on here as well? That's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
So if you're up to it, maybe next week we can drop it here as well.
Sure.
All right. Tomorrow's Friday, so tomorrow is pretty much open forum. Some people said, I think Hamad said he could not connect to the video, so I really don't know why. So tomorrow will be no real topic, but open, and we'll take your videos and questions and connect.
Thank you, Bushra.
There's a comment saying a little earlier so I can join. Do suggest a time. Let's not make it earlier yet. People start suggesting a time, and in about 3-4 days, if there's enough consensus, I'm sure Dennis can then consider. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. You have a good night and a good morning, and we shall see you again tomorrow night.
Very good. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate your comments and your participation. Peace.
Bye-bye.